Welcome to Radicards TV on Radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Greeno, and today we have Brian Hayes of Linguist Sports Cards joining us again here for another episode of Radicards Questions. If you're unfamiliar with this segment, it's 3 questions. We talk about them for 5 minutes each with a standard deviation of 3 to 5 minutes for miscellaneous dialogue and such. So let's get straight to it. Thanks again, Brian, for joining us today. Really appreciate that. And let's get straight to it here. Question number 1. How does ultra overpricing influence artificial demand?
Well, I guess it all depends on who's doing the overpricing. Is the overpricing coming directly from the card companies, or is it coming from, like a supplier of cards or a local card shop? So, I think you sort of got to look at it from two areas. If the overpricing is coming directly from the card company, then the distributors, they're going to have to raise their price to make a profit, which in turn hits the customers. So, I think that either way, I guess it's gonna hit the customers, and so it's really, I think the question really comes is it coming from the distributors, and how much of a profit do they need to feel like it's worthwhile to stay in the industry?
So interesting, right? It's like an interesting conversation. The reason why I pose this is because what I'm looking at it is from resellers' point of view. So for example, I have a set of cards, and the cards are actual valued at about $350 to $450 a card, let's just say. Okay. I, in turn, put them on eBay for $6,000 to $7,000 a card. Okay, with a best offer option. So buy it now at $6,000 to $7,000 with the OBO option. So think about this. If I'm positioning a product to be that high quality, that high price, and I have an OBO option, people, you may entertain any offer that comes your way. Granted, you probably won't get very many, if any at all. But if I lower the price to, say, $3,000, right, which now is half off of $6,000, which is still way, way overpriced. But if I bring it down to that price, I'm now giving the potential buyer an opportunity to make a deal, even though they're going to pay through the nose way more than the card's worth, but they're thinking now that they can get a deal. So when I overprice something, I'm actually positioning my product to garner some sort of way right field, way out of ballpark perceived market value that might turn into actual, because people think that I'm getting a deal if I lower it down even further. But that further deal is still way overpriced.
Okay, yeah. So if you're talking more like once the cards are actually like in an end user's hand, like a customer's hands,
right,
and on the retail market, so much of that in that case goes to how much information does a would-be customer have access to? If you've got a track record, let's say you're going on eBay or some other online site, if you've been able to track in the past, what the card's been selling for, if you've been able to look at trends, you're going to be able to make a more informed decision. And so whether or not, if you see a big discount, let's say from 6,000, a discount down to 3,000, if you've got that history, if you've got that information, you're going to be able to make a more informed decision. You're probably not going to, pay $3,000 if you can see in the past it's not been selling for that much. But if you don't have access to that information, let's say you're new to collecting, or you're probably not too new if you're going to be buying higher end cards like this. But generally speaking, if you don't have as much information, you're more likely going to be swayed by those kind of discounts.
This is another conversation we can talk about. Is the old caveat emptor, right? It's buyer beware. If I am choosing to spend that kind of money, the assumption is that I'm an educated consumer, right?
Yeah.
If I'm educated, I should know that card's overpriced, right? So what I'm doing as the seller by doing that is actually, it might actually hurt me as a seller, because it would make me look like I'm being too overzealous, if you will, like overambitious with what I'm trying. Basically, I'm positioning a product catered to an audience with deep pockets, but knowing that deep pocket audience is going to be educated on high dollar purchases, And so they might be less apt to deal with me knowing that I'm trying to basically get more money out of them deliberately.
It really depends. Like when we talk about buyers with deep pockets, it's just exactly how deep of pockets they have. Because at some point, if you have access to that much, wealth or purchasing power, a card's overpriced. You still might just go for it if you've got that much. And so once again, so much of this depends on the card. How much does that individual customer want that card? Exactly how deep are their pockets? There's a lot of moving parts here. But I would say, generally speaking, right, like so many things, not just in cards, but anytime, you're making a purchase in any hobby or for anything for that matter, the more information you have as a buyer, the more informed you're going to be. Probably you're going to be less swayed by, those kinds of deals where someone's, has an initial offer really high, and they discount it to make it look like a great deal, but in fact it's not.
Good question to think about. I'm glad we got to cover that. Good stuff. Good stuff. Question 2. If the sport of basketball never saw the likes of Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, would 1990s basketball inserts be as popular as they are in today's market?
That's a good question. I would say probably not be as popular, especially with Jordan. He was, most people even now, would say he's the greatest player of all time. It was just a perfect storm with him, with his greatness, the explosion of basketball in general on the world stage. It became global because of the Olympics. And so there was going to be, so much of the value that, pushes up the value of a lot of basketball cards now is that you've got more of a global audience.
Mm-hmm.
The expansion of basketball worldwide, it would have taken off regardless of Jordan and Kobe in the 90s because the game went international.
Right.
And so I think you would have still had a large, a global audience for cards. I think more so than, well, football for sure, and even baseball to a larger extent. You've got a real global audience, and I think that would have happened, but probably not quite as much as it did. I would say Kobe, there would have been other stars who would have at least approached Kobe, but Jordan, the sustained greatness, the 6 championships, he's such a transformational player, not just in sports, but just as a global icon. That really pulls up a lot of his cards, and I think because of that, the other cards in the sets, the value of some of those cards is also being pulled up by him. So I would say, to answer your question, I think Jordan more than Kobe. As great as Kobe is, and the value of his cards, they're amazing. I think other players, if not Kobe, there would have been other stars. There's numerous stars from the 90s who sell well. Jordan's still in a league of his own.
Yeah, this is an interesting question to think about because if we didn't experience Jordan or Kobe, would basketball be as exciting as it is? Right?
Well,
would we be able to tender memories of excitement that would match something of, say, a Jordan or a Kobe if we didn't have one? Granted, I think that the NBA did a great job garnering that talent, bringing it forward and developing it into the marquee value that they brought to the sport of basketball. But if we didn't have those two guys, who would we have had to bring that kind of audience exposure, that greatness to the court, that passion, that excitement? I sometimes think about granted, I think about it because it's in the past, but what could have been if we didn't see the greatness of Jordan and Kobe? I'm glad we did, but what could have been, and how would that have impacted the hobby?
Well, I think we're sort of seeing that now. Obviously Jordan's been retired for a long time now. Kobe's gone.
Right.
The league is finding other stars. With LeBron James, they're there. I think in the 90s, if Jordan and Kobe weren't there, other stars would have filled the gap. I'm trying to think of when Jordan retired there in 93, 94, and then for most of 94, 95. The league, I'm trying to remember how the popularity of the league was then. I remember with the baseball strike in 94, basketball was still real popular, but the NHL was also, gaining a lot of steam there, like in 94. So that's something to think about. But the other thing real quickly is, so I actually lived over in China in 2000, from 2005 to 2007. So Jordan was retired then, but still huge over in China.
Mm-hmm.
Then everyone, all the young people interested in sports that I talked to knew Michael Jordan was real clear. But also T-Mac and Allen Iverson, I would say, from my experiences, were just as big as Kobe over in China and obviously Yao Ming. But I guess my point is, once again, in my mind, there's really a distinction between Jordan and Kobe. I feel like Kobe, what I saw was other athletes, Tracy McGrady, Allen Iverson, seemed to have that popularity, at least, to a large number of people that I was talking to over in China for a couple of years. Jordan still, once again, though, I think is just in a class by himself.
Truly.
That said, 90s basketball inserts, no matter what, I think we're always going to sell well because of the global reach that basketball has.
Yeah, that's a big point, is that I think basketball has that going for it. That's a big piece of basketball card popularity, is that there's a whole separate demographic, a whole other market in the world that is huge, passionate audience for basketball cards. And prices can rise, drastically for certain 90s inserts. Baseball is moving in that direction, but I think it's still going to be some time yet before it's as global as in popularity as basketball is. Good stuff, man. Glad we got to talk about that. Question 3. In what ways do bulk product breaks influence the onset of an arbitrage?
Do you want to take the lead on this one? I'd like to hear it.
Sure. So arbitrage is when I can buy a low somewhere and then sell it at a profit elsewhere and continue doing this. And eventually, low supply here will drive up cost and high supply here will drive down cost. And eventually those prices will be kind of the same.
Okay.
That's an arbitrage, right? So if I'm buying a bunch of stuff low at product breaks and I flip them in the market, and now the market's flooded with, say, 2017 Don Russ, Frank Thomas cards.
Okay.
Right? So now the market's flooded, so I can get them for cheap because there's so many of them over here. Now I go to product breaks over here, and there are now less boxes left from all the breaks. Do I still go and get breaks at higher prices because the demand is higher because of lower supply? Or is it over here in the market where stuff's being flooded into the market and the demand is low because the supply is high?
So this, I think, once again, it all depends on, when we talk about the sports collecting hobby, there's so many different stakeholders. You've got pure collectors. I don't know if that's quite the right term. You've got collectors and you've got people in there that are trying to make more of a profit. And so I think some people, if they're just looking to add certain players, they're going to just take the time to do that as maybe cheaply as they can. And so they're going to be patient. And I don't know whether that's through, buying, or I'm not saying this quite correctly how I want to say it, but for some people, I don't know if they have a systematic plan as to how to obtain their cards. They're just going to go to a card show. They're gonna check eBay. They're just gonna search for a single. The card's there. They're gonna get it. And I don't think they're really thinking about it in that terms. But on the other hand, if you're more in the hobby to make more of a profit, things of that nature, then I think you start thinking more along the terms of where is it more prudent to spend money to obtain cards in order to flip them to sell. So I guess, in other words, it's more, are you a buyer and a seller, or are you just a buyer, or are you a purchaser?
This is an interesting question to think about, because there's that window of opportunity in the beginning, the very beginning, where the cards are super spiked high because they're the first ones to come in the market. Mm-hmm. And within a couple days, a week goes by, prices are now, they've asymptotically sort of tapered off, and they're cheaper now. There's an abundance of them, and then the market dries up about 3 or 4 weeks later. Then you just don't see anymore. That's it. So you have like 2 to 3 week window to get stuff, and you might be paying a lot right out of the gate. But if you stretch this over time and say, I paid a lot up front out of the gate, and I fast forward to, say, 5 years from now, and I see a card that was released on this week, and now that card's garnered significant high resale price because you don't see them on the market anymore. A perfect example is like Crusades from 1998, right? That's a big piece of it. You probably saw a lot of them back then in 98, and now you just see rarely any of them. I talk about the select certifieds, the mirror golds from 96. Again, a block of them in 96, now you just don't see them. So they're garnering significant price points. But product breaks allow us to get everything quickly because things are being broken and sold on this market over here, right? Now,
Yep.
if we didn't have product breaks and people were just opening and just randomly buying and then putting them over here, we didn't have the whole industry that's been kind of diversified in the sense that people are buying a lot of wax and selling teams and then ripping open and then everything ends up on the secondary market for us to buy. Would we see how would that influence price over the course of time? Would we see windows of opportunity to get lots of cards, or would we have to space it out and wait for our players to surface? I think about this and what that would look like if we didn't have guys that would just break product.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the big difference now between, like, if we're talking 90s inserts is that in the 90s when a lot of those, rare insert cards were coming out, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't, like, the group break.
Right.
And so, I actually, I don't know, like, in the 90s, like 98 Crusade, when they came out, or 96 Select Certified, the golds, when they first came out, were there actually a lot available? So that, I mean, that's just sort of an aside. I'm just kind of curious. Was there ever a time when those cards could be had in relative abundance, relatively cheaply? I'm not sure. Maybe it was like that. I was starting to come out of the hobby a little bit in the 90s when some of those great insert sets were coming out.
You said early in this conversation that you weren't certain about situations that would exist where you could find 96 mirror golds in quantity, right? So
right.
I've talked to some dealers over the years that I've met in various places. One dealer specifically, he said that in 96, he was at a show and another dealer had an entire showcase of mirror golds in 96. Like, he had broken a bunch of boxes and had all the big players. I mean, I've never seen mirror golds in abundance. I've seen them online like that, but obviously not in lots or whatever. They're like individual cards.
Right.
Star players are always hard to find, and you rarely see them starting out at 99% auction style just to let the market ride. You always see huge bins on them, and sometimes they'll sell, and most of the time they don't. I think that with product breaks, the excitement comes from, obviously, you can really hit gold with those. There's a chance. And there's also a chance you just get pummeled. I mean, it's just like you don't know what's going to happen. But that's part of the excitement, and I totally get that, and I respect it. I think it's great. I just think it's kind of a cool concept because it allows guys like us, the player collectors, the set builders, or whatever, to have access almost instantly to the product within that window of time.
For the hobby, I think they're good. I'm all for new ideas. Distributors or card shops or anyone really finding new ways to bring people in the hobbies, changing things up, adapting. I'm all for that, and I'm glad that they're a part of the hobby now. I think a lot of people like them. Obviously, they're very popular now, as you're saying.
Totally, I'm all about it. I think it's great. It's a good move forward. Glad we got a chance to talk. Thank you for sitting down with me, Mr. Brian Hayes of Lingua Sports Cards, for joining us. Thank you for watching another episode of Radicards TV on Radicards.com. I'm your host, Patrick Reno, and until next time, enjoy collecting. If you like this video, please subscribe. Enjoy collecting. Thank you.